All right, let's jump right into this explainer. If you've ever tried picking up a new language, you absolutely know that humbling feeling, right? You confidently say a word, and you just get this blank, deeply confused look in return. Well, whether you're a hardcore language nerd or just someone who loves the rhythm of world languages, understanding how written words totally transform when spoken is the key to actually unlocking a culture. So today, we're going to break down exactly how and why Brazilian Portuguese does this.
So why doesn't Portuguese sound like it looks? If you've spent any time learning the language or, traveling around Brazil, you've probably noticed a massive disconnect between the written word and what you actually hear spoken out loud. You look at a sign or a menu, your brain tells you to pronounce it one way, but then a native speaker says the exact same word and there is no way it's the same word, right? It sounds entirely different. It honestly makes you question your own ears. But I promise you aren't going crazy. There is a very specific underlying logic to this, and seeing it laid out is going to completely change how you approach the language.
Section 1. The Magic Vowel Shift, or How Letters Change Sound. Okay, to really crack this puzzle, we've got to look at the core mechanics of everyday spoken Portuguese. It's all about how certain letters just magically transform when spoken out loud. Here's the golden rule. In everyday speech, especially in the middle or at the end of words, the vowel E often shifts to sound like an I, and the O shifts to sound like a U. It is literally that simple. E equals I, and O equals U. It's a basic substitution, but it completely rewrites the auditory landscape of the language. When you read, your brain wants to lock into those rigid E and O sounds. But spoken language? It's fluid. It has a life of its own. And this isn't some sort of mistake or sloppy speech. It's actually a fundamental rule of everyday communication down in Brazil.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates why the language sounds the way it does. As our source puts it with his fantastic quote, this shift helps give Brazilian Portuguese its smooth, musical sound. It's a totally natural feature of the spoken language that creates this flowing, melodic rhythm. Think about it for a second. The I and U sounds are just softer. They require a lot less jaw tension, which allows the words to just glide right into one another. Without this vowel shift, the language would sound way more rigid and staccato. This shift is literally the secret ingredient to that famous Brazilian musicality.
Let's actually make this concrete with a few examples. Look at that first word, L-E-I-T, milk. Now you might look at that and want to say leite, right? But with our vowel shift, that final E transforms into an I and it becomes lychee. See how smooth that is? Next up, we have interessante. That rigid pronunciation softens up right at the end to become interessanti. And finally, esporte, meaning sport. The E at the beginning and the E at the end both undergo shifts in everyday casual speech, transforming the whole thing into esporte. Once you get this simple rule, the mystery completely vanishes, you just apply the shift.
Moving right along to Section 2, A Tale of Two Brazils, Regional Pronunciation Differences. Now, here's where things get really interesting. We're going to see how this linguistic rule essentially draws a geographical map across the massive, diverse country of Brazil. Because here's the twist, this shift doesn't actually happen everywhere in the exact same way. Take a vibrant place like Rio de Janeiro or northeastern cities like Salvador and Recife. Down there, that informal, vowel-shifting style we just learned about is incredibly common. People naturally shift those vowels without even thinking about it. It's practically woven into the cultural fabric. But contrast that with the more formal environments of São Paulo and the south of Brazil like Curitiba or Porto Alegre. Over there, speakers are way more likely to pronounce the vowels literally, exactly as they're written on the page. A word ending in E is going to sound a lot more like an E. It's a stark contrast that maps perfectly onto the geography of the nation.
All right, Section 3, Sounding like a Local, Embracing the Variations.
So what's the big takeaway for you here? If you're trying to master the language yourself, which pronunciation should you actually be copying? Well, it's all about perspective. Take a look at this definition for regional variation. It is absolutely vital to remember that these are just regional and cultural variations of the exact same language, meaning you do not need to stress about one way being better or more correct than the other. If you pronounce leche exactly as it's spelled, you aren't technically wrong. You might just sound like you're from Curitiba instead of Rio. The beauty of language is in these exact regional nuances. They are cultural signatures, not grammatical errors.
Ultimately, this explainer isn't just about fun linguistic trivia, it's about real, practical application. Understanding these nuances is basically your secret weapon. By knowing that the E might sound like an I and an O like a U, depending entirely on where you are, you're allowing yourself not only to speak with way more confidence, but to actually comprehend native speakers no matter what part of Brazil they hail from. You won't be caught off guard when someone from Recife says esporte, or when someone from Porto Alegre gives it a much more literal pronunciation.
Your brain is now wired to understand both sides of the Brazilian coin. So, as our source material asks to wrap things up, want to sound more natural when you speak Portuguese? The path forward isn't just rote memorization of some dusty textbook. It's embracing these beautiful, dynamic regional variations as you continue your language journey. So I'll leave you with this to ponder. The next time you look at a foreign word on a page, are you going to trust your eyes? Or are you going to listen for the hidden music of the culture behind it?